ladies and gentlemen, I'm Adam Wolf from Gamers Platform, and in this video we're going to be going over a few tricks, I would say, maybe not tricks, but adjustments, tweaks, say it however you want, in order to improve your gaming experience. Now, this experience is more along the lines of if you've had any issues with your games lately. I have been having issues for quite some time with a lot of games, namely Witcher 3, Witcher 2 even. What was the other game I tried? Oh, Assassin's Creed Origins. A lot of these modern games don't seem to run well on my modern hardware, and I was always questioning what is going on here. I don't understand this. I have a very powerful machine. GTX 1060 is supposed to be better than the 980 or whatever they're saying it's supposed to be. And I've never really had consistent frame rates. I've had constant stuttering. And all this, of course, was driven by the fact that last night I was trying to figure out better settings for The Witcher 3 in order for me to play it. Now, I wanted to get pre-fixed footage, and because I did all this last night, and this morning I wanted to get pre-fixed footage, so I reverted all the changes, expecting the game to run poorly as it was last night, and it turns out it wasn't. So, one of the changes that I made must have done something on the operating system level where it no longer is an issue. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it seems as though, yeah, I did something that may have caused the system to be like, okay, well, you know, it cleaned up or something like that. Something got cleaned up, and now it's fine. So I'm unable to really prove, as much as I wanted to, I'm unable to prove that these fixes work, but I know that what I did was I improved system performance, and it fixed my stuttering / frame drop issues that I was having. Full disclaimer, if you are uncomfortable with changing Windows registry files, with tweaking anything in your operating system or whatever, don't do anything in the second half after I cover what to do in Nvidia Control Panel. Okay, Nvidia Control Panel is actually a lot simpler. It's pretty straightforward. It's for most gamers, whatever. But the second portion of this whole thing is going to be covering something a little bit more in depth, a little bit more technical side of things, and I will do my best to explain things. I learned of a few things. I knew about one of them already, but I didn't know really how it worked, and the other thing I didn't know at all. So, I'm still learning it myself, but I'm going to share with you guys what I did to get improved performance out of my games, and not just out of my games, but out of my system as well. So to start things off with Nvidia Control Panel, the one thing that all of us are going to be able to relate to, if you have an Nvidia graphics card, follow along. If you have an AMD card, I'm not even sure if you have these similar issues, so I don't know. I don't have one installed, but you definitely don't have these settings. So, you know, your mileage may vary. You might have to tweak something yourself. I would love to cover it. If I knew if AMD had any of these issues. I don't know if they do. So to start things off, just go open your NVIDIA Control Panel. You can do this by double-clicking the little tray icon in the bottom right, or just right-clicking on the desktop and hitting NVIDIA Control Panel. Go to Adjust Image Settings with Preview, and then make sure that this box is checked or this radial button is enabled. Use the Advanced 3D Image Settings. And then you could say take me there, or just go to Manage 3D Settings. By default, you'll be on the Global Settings tab. This is the one that controls all the settings for everything you run, every application you run ever. You can be specific to the programs if you want to, so you can hit the Program Settings tab. Mine takes a couple seconds to load things. And then you can choose in this box what program you wanted. So as you can see, the last thing I tested was The Witcher 3, but I'm just going to be using global settings because although I was very specific with The Witcher 3, it turns out these changes actually have affected a lot of my games other than that. Assassin's Creed Origins, Assassin's Creed Syndicate were two games that did not run that well, and these are also games that I, for some reason, was unable to play on the high preset. Not the highest, just the high. You guys know how I feel about playing games on ultra. It's completely useless and whatever. But on the high preset, I was unable to achieve and maintain a smooth 60 frames a second. After doing some of these tweaks, one of which is actually the one that I really ultimately changed. These other ones I'm just going to show you because they're general tweaks, and I think that they're very important to just reiterate. Yeah, so we'll take a look. One of these tweaks actually ended up improving my performance dramatically, and the stuttering and the frame drops went away. Okay, for me. This may change for you. Okay, just keep that in mind. So we're going to go down the list here. I'm not going to cover everything, just the things that I came across. The one thing that I mentioned that really changed things for me was this option right here, maximum pre-rendered frames. Now, by default, it says use the 3D application settings. Generally, you would think the game would know how many frames it wants to render before showing it to you on screen, but it may not. It may be poorly optimized. Who knows? All I know is that I read around a little bit on the internet, okay, and the general consensus was setting this to 1, specifically for The Witcher 3, okay, but I found that this also works in a lot of other games. Setting this to 1, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the amount of frames that get pre-rendered before they are sent to the display. Basically, a quick definition of maximum pre-render frames is pretty much in its name. It's self-explanatory, but it controls the number of frames the CPU prepares in advance of being rendered by the GPU. So your CPU will say, okay, I need 1 frame rendered before, prior to it being shown, sends that information to the GPU renders that frame, sends it back, and then it's displayed. Okay. Some people have said they've seen improvements going up to 4. Now, the problem with this is that I don't see how, okay, I don't see how adding more frames to be pre-rendered could improve performance. In most cases, that would actually decrease performance and actually introduce input lag between your mouse and keyboard. I don't know if I've ever seen a difference. I mean, use the 3D application setting. I guess defaults to about 3. But for me, that caused a lot of, not input lag, but it caused a lot of stuttering and frame drops. When I reduced this to 1, and I forced it to render 1 frame, pre-render 1 frame, and then send it, there was massive improvements. The stuttering disappeared, and the frame drop stopped. I was blown away just by doing this one tweak. Okay, I hadn't done anything else that I'm about to mention to you guys before doing them. I just changed this maximum pre-render frames to 1, and I saw massive improvements in the video game. Okay, so give it a try. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't make a difference, don't bother. And then other things that you can change in Nvidia control panel just to make sure that you are using the most power out of your GPU. Power management mode, always set this to prefer maximum performance because you want the most performance out of your graphics card. Duh. And moving on down here, threaded optimization, automatically set to auto, but I'm going to turn this on because I want to make sure that it is using as many threads as it needs. Okay. I want it to use as much power as it can muster. Allows applications to take advantage of multiple CPUs. So, if you have a multi-core system, which most people do, especially gamers, even though it's set to auto and it probably uses it most of the time, I would suggest just turning this on. And what most people would actually advise against doing is turning on vertical sync. Now, enabling vertical sync on the graphics card level, I guess you could say is close. Not exactly the same, but it's close to the idea of what they're bringing out nowadays, G-Sync and FreeSync monitors, where the graphics card is more in sync with your display. This kind of bridges that gap a little bit if you don't have a monitor like that, like I don't. I don't have a G-Sync monitor, so letting the graphics card do the work on in terms of syncing up the frame rate with your display actually kind of is better than using in-game vertical sync. Vertical sync is just, it's a technology that's been around for many, many years. It hasn't exactly been great. There are some games that implement it better than others, but generally it's not great. So most people tend to turn it off and play in borderless windowed mode. I have, since I stream and I record, borderless windowed mode is a lovely thing to have. So because then I can turn off vertical sync, and I don't need to worry about it. But at the same time, if I want to make sure that my GPU isn't being used at 100%, I turn on vertical sync, and then that also cuts down on usage of the GPU, of resources on the GPU that don't need to be used. Enabling vertical sync on the graphics card level tends to be much better. I suggest turning this on, or whatever you feel is more comfortable. Adaptive is, it's on, but if it drops below 60 frames a second, screen tearing will happen. Half refresh rate adaptive is it cuts your the frame rate of the game in half based on your monitor's frame rate. And then, of course, you have fast, which is equivalent to VSync being off, but there's no screen tearing. I turn it on because I just want it to be synced up to my monitor. And then, as is good practice, turn on triple buffering when VSync is on, because they work really, they work in conjunction with each other. Now, keep in mind, most games do not recognize that VSync is turned on unless the game is full screened. If you're in borderless windowed, there's very few games that actually still use Nvidia's VSync option. Very few actually recognize that it's working for whatever reason. I don't know why. There's like Assassin's Creed Syndicate was one of the few games that actually still recognizes that vertical sync is enabled even in borderless windowed mode. So, if you want to take advantage of this, you have to play your games in full screen. I'm just having it on in case there are older games like that don't have borderless windowed mode that are only full screen, where VSync is also not that great, to use this. So we're going to hit apply. Take a couple seconds. There you go. Also, I am doing, obviously, I'm doing live commentary because I don't particularly care to try and line up what I'm explaining with video. It just never works out for me. Anyway, and then just go to configure surround and physics and just make sure that your graphics card is chosen. This is by default on auto select, but you don't want physics being rendered on your CPU. The graphics card was built to do that, so just make sure that it's on your graphics card. And that's it for Nvidia. Okay, that's it for the control panel. If any of this helps, definitely let me down in the comments below. Let me know if changing the maximum pre-rendered frames has helped you, or if it really hasn't changed anything at all. You can also let me know right there as well. We're going to be moving on to the more technical side of things, dealing with Windows as an operating system alone. So if that's not your bag, thank you for stopping on by and checking the video out. And if you like it, thumbs up, dislike it, thumbs down, yada yada yada. And thanks for watching. But for those of you who are a little bit more tech savvy and want to know some of these changes that you can do to improve your system's performance, even just a little bit, stick around. We're going to be going into that right now. Okay, so to start things off, I'm going to go over some things that are very obvious. Okay, and to those of you who have messed with Windows before, you know some of the things that you can do to improve performance, even just the smallest bit. And we're going to go into that right now. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into your File Explorer, then you're going to right click on this PC, go to Properties. Okay, this window is going to pop up. You're going to go to Advanced System Settings. Okay, and then it's going to automatically open into the Advanced tab. Go to Performance, click on Settings, and this is the window that most of us, I'm sure, if you've messed with these settings before, you're very familiar with. You have the choice of letting Windows to choose what's best for your computer, adjust for best appearance and best performance. Most people would say just hit this and hit apply. However, there's some features that I actually like to keep on personally, like smooth edges of screen fonts. If I leave that off, this is going to look like doo-doo, and I don't want that. So I tend to keep some features on, like that, like using drop shadows for icons, show window contents while dragging, so while you're dragging the window, this stuff is still with it instead of just being stagnant. I don't know why it does that. Stop doing that. It just doing that for some reason minimized all the windows. I don't know why. I don't know why it does that. Anyway, and let's see. We've got show thumbnails instead of icons. So roughly about these 4 I like to keep personally. You can have other things like animations in the taskbar and whatnot. You could pick and choose whatever you want, but if I'm to suggest any to keep, these would be the 4 to keep. Thumbnails instead of icons, window contents while dragging, smooth edges of screen fonts, and use drop shadows for icon labels on the desktop. So hit apply. That takes into effect, and now it actually does, your things do run faster. Like windows pop up faster. They don't have to worry about animating or anything like that. They're just boom, popped up, done. Okay, we're gonna hit OK. Oh no, I'm sorry, we're not gonna hit OK. We don't want to get out of that window. My bad. We're going to actually move over to the Advanced tab. Now, what we're going to be focusing on right now is virtual memory. What this is, okay, we're going to be going in here and we're going to be messing with something called the paging file. And I'm going to leave a link in the description for all of these articles that I've come across so that you guys can read into them a little bit more, but I'm going to do the best I can to explain what I read. The page file, which I have known about for many years, okay, I've known about it, I just really didn't look into it, I didn't know what it did. It's a memory management scheme by which a computer stores and retrieves data from secondary storage for use in memory, in main memory, meaning your RAM. So basically what that means is that you have a certain amount of RAM and system memory in your system. So RAM, RAM, or random access memory. For example, when you open up a web page, that's accessing your RAM because you're accessing it. Okay, that's what is being used right now, so that's where the memory kicks in and says, okay, we need this much to run this web page, so on and so forth. That's why when you have like tons of tabs open in your web browser, you are required to have more RAM because each one of those pages is being allocated some system memory in order to run. Well, according to this, the page file is temporary storage in case you run out of system RAM. That's my understanding of it. So I've got 16 gigs of RAM in this system, as you can see right here. Okay? If I was to use up all that system RAM, the page file would store data that is not being accessed but is open, so to speak. So if I'm just assuming this is how it works, and this works for applications too. This isn't just based on web browsing. If I was to have a tab available but I'm not looking at it, that type of data would be stored in the page file, and then when I access it, then it would throw it into system memory. That's just based on my ability to understand this, okay? So that's what the page file does. And it turns out that it does tend to actually have a minor negative effect on how games perform, how your programs perform. Not just video games, but any programs really. And very much in line with like scratch disks, if you're familiar with using like Adobe Premiere Pro or Photoshop, they use something called a scratch disk, where it's like temporary read and write storage to kind of, while it's like rendering, either an image or a video. And having those scratch disks on hard drives or solid state drives that are separate from where the primary file is tends to improve performance. By default, virtual memory is automatically managed by the system. You can uncheck this, okay? And then you get 3 options. First of all, you get like 4 options basically. You get to choose where the paging file sits, and you can choose either custom size, let the system manage it, or have no paging file at all. Do not do this last one. You need a paging file in case you run out of system memory. Otherwise, your system may lock up, and you basically would have to do a hard restart, which is bad. So never do no paging file unless you're switching to another drive, which I will be doing. So really just focus on custom size or system managed size. If you are not really comfortable doing any of this, just let the system do it. Keep this checked. It's basically the same thing. However, what I'm going to show you is how to switch the page file from the C drive, which is where my operating system is, to my D drive, which is a hard drive. So it's not an SSD, but it's extra storage, and the page file is, if you've got enough memory, from my understanding, the page file is rarely used unless you need it. And since it's slower memory anyway, it's always going to be slower than RAM. It's just there to access when the system needs it. So being on a hard drive is not a detriment to the page file. So what we're going to do on the C drive, we're going to say no paging file, set. It's going to tell you, hey, if you do this, it might not be able to record details to help you identify the problem. Just hit yes. Choose the hard drive or solid state drive. It could be on another solid state if you want to, that you want it to be on. Then choose custom size, okay, because we're going to set the custom size. The recommended, as you can see, what's currently allocated is less than what is recommended. That just happens because the system is using however much memory it wants. Or currently needs, which is clearly not a lot. But I'm going to set the recommended as it's common practice. You set the initial size of the page file, okay, to the recommended size, which is 2938 or 2,938 megabytes, just under 3 gigs. The maximum size of the page file is generally, people say, 1.5 to 2 times the size of the initial size. So we're going to pull up a calculator real quick. Okay. And we're going to do only 1.5 times. I don't really think it should be very big. 2 times just doesn't seem necessary. So we're going to take 2,938 times 1.5, and we get 4407. So 4,407 megabytes, or just over 4.4 gigabytes of memory. Okay, and so when it needs to be accessed, this is the amount that it has available, and this is the amount that it can basically not go past. We're going to set this, hit OK, and it tells you, I've done this before. I reverted everything, so, obviously, it tells me another file exists with the file name D page file. Do you wish to overwrite the existing file with page file? I'm just going to hit yes. Okay. Normally, after this, it would tell you to restart your computer. I think it was already using the page file that I had on my D drive anyway, so it don't need to restart, but generally, you should be restarting your computer here. Especially after all these changes that you're going to make, you're going to want to restart your computer, okay? Just to make sure that they go through. So that's the page file. The page file concept is going to work into our next adjustment, which is called the Prefetch or the Superfetch. Now, what these are, and I'm going to read this little tidbit off to you guys. It is a component of the memory manager that can speed up the Windows boot process and shorten the amount of time it takes to start up programs. It accomplishes this by caching files that are needed by an application to RAM, so again, working with your system memory, as the application is launched, thus consolidating disk reads and reducing disk seeks. So, in a nutshell, prefetching allows your system to operate faster. The reason I'm telling you guys that disabling prefetch and superfetch is not going to be a problem is because if you have an SSD, oops, I didn't want to open that. If you have an SSD, these things actually, they say that Windows is smart enough to notice when you're running off a solid state drive. I don't trust Windows, so I'm just going to disable them anyway. because they don't actually do anything if you have Windows installed on a SSD. If nothing else, they apparently are a detriment to how your system runs, even if it's on an SSD. Because SSDs, that's why they tell you not to defrag SSDs, because they have built-in technology that keeps them defragged, and plus they're not actual, there's no physical drive, so it doesn't get fragmented. And that's why they say that disabling Prefetch may actually improve performance, because now it's no longer having to do any of this, because the SSD is already fast enough. It doesn't really need these functions. So, in order to open up Prefetch, okay, there's Prefetch and Superfetch. There's two different things. They were Prefetch was introduced in Windows XP. Superfetch, I believe, was in Vista, and they've been around since. And really just pertain to hard drives. So if you have an operating system installed on a hard drive, don't touch these. All right? Just leave it alone. But for those of us who actually install our operating systems on solid-state drives, open your run command by hitting the Windows key and R, okay? So you're going to hit Windows, which is the key that opens this up, okay? But you're going to hold it and then hit R, and that'll open up the run command. Type in regedit. Again, disclaimer, warning, warning, if you are not comfortable with editing the registry, do not do this, okay? I'd rather you be uncomfortable doing it than actually doing it and screwing something up. Because the registry, as we all know, you screw one thing up, the whole system breaks. Okay? This will not break your system, but don't want you to do the wrong things. Now, where you're going to find the Prefetcher, as you can see, it's already here, but I'm going to show you the folders that you have to go through. You're going to click on the arrows, okay? So you're going to go into HKey local machine, then you'll go down to System, Current Control Set, Control, go all the way down to Session Manager, Memory Management, Prefetch Parameters, and you're going to click on this. We can click on this too, but I think they changed it up to where if you go into Prefetch Parameters, Superfetch used to be in here as well, but now it's actually in the services, and we'll go over that in a second. So you're going to go into Enable Prefetcher. Since I want to turn this off, we're going to right-click it and modify. There are 4 values that you can put in this text box. You have 0, which turns it off. You have 1, which only allows it to work for applications. You have 2, which only allows it to work for Windows startup or boot up. And then you have 3, which works for both. Make sure it's a hexadecimal. I am going to be turning it to 0. Okay. Now, if you are just wanting your computer to boot up faster, you can put in 2. But again, if you're running a hard drive, you're going to want it to work for both applications and Windows boot up, because it'll make it faster. Okay. But for me, it's not necessary, so I'm just going to turn it off. Click OK. And that's that for the Prefetcher. To open Superfetch, we're just going to go down here and type Services. Okay. Click on this. That's going to open up this window here. These are all your services that either automatically start or manually start when you access those services. You're just going to scroll all the way down to the S's until you see Superfetch right here. By default, it's on automatically. Okay, that's the startup type. It automatically starts. And the description is maintains and improves system performance over time. But again, my operating system is on an SSD, so it really doesn't need it. So we're going to take the startup type and turn it to disabled. Okay, and then we're going to stop the service because it's running right now. Then we're going to hit apply, and then OK. And that's it. Prefetch and Superfetch are now disabled. You have the adjustments that were made in Nvidia Control Panel, and hopefully some of these changes will help you guys. I really hope they do. Again, if you are uncomfortable with doing any of this, don't do it. And I fully understand. It's very, like, there's a lot of risks involved with messing with Windows registry and all this stuff. But if you know what you're reading, you understand what you're reading, and you know what you're doing when navigating your PC, give these a try. If you've been having the issues that I've been having with my games, stuttering, frame drops, whatever, some of these might actually help you out. more or less on the Nvidia control panel side, but Windows, they say that Windows 10 was built with gamers in mind. I'm tending to not agree. There's a lot of features that they've introduced that are really just useless. Like, for example, if I was to go into here, there's a lot of other settings that I've adjusted. Like, you go into your privacy settings, you turn off location and, notifications, background apps, what apps run in the background. I turned all these off, maybe except for the camera because, I need to use it every once in a while. But the bottom line is all this stuff was turned on. And I'm like, why is Recore? Why is Gears of War? Why is Killer Instinct? Why are these all running in the background? I want none of these to run in the background because I'm not using them. And so a lot of these features that came with Windows 10 kind of bogged it down. So you can go through all these things if you like. That's in the privacy settings. If you go into system, there's a few things in here that you can actually change either on or off. It's all based on your preference, power and sleep and whatnot. But I personally do not want all this crap running in the background, especially when I'm trying to game, trying to stream, trying to record anything. It just does not help. Okay. And so I hope that these changes actually help you guys because they helped me, and I figured I'd just kind of put it all into one video. It's a little bit of a long video, but I think it'll be worth it if it does actually help you. And if it does help you, don't forget to tell me down in the comments. I love seeing comments, guys, so really leave comments down below letting me know if it helped you. Let me know if it didn't help you, and that's fine. If it didn't help you, it didn't work, it didn't change anything, that's cool too, because then we can get a broader idea as to what system configurations work that this works for and which ones it doesn't. I personally think that with Windows 10 being the main operating system, there's a lot of problems that are going to come with it, and we need to know how to fix these things that Microsoft seems to think are not a problem. Yeah, so there's a notification. So thank you again for joining me. I hope that this helps you. Leave a comment down below if it did. Even if it didn't, leave a comment anyway. If you like it, hit that thumbs up button. Dislike it if you're so sick of technology. Subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to check the links to all these articles in the description below. But more importantly, check the one for Extra Life. I'm trying to raise $200 for my local children's hospital. I could really use the help, guys. It would mean a lot to me if you could give. If you can't give, don't worry. $200 is not a lot, and we have all year to do it. So I promise you, we're going to get that money. But if you can give, don't hesitate to donate. Until next time, guys, I'm Adam Wolf. This was a pretty decent tutorial, I think. And I'll see you guys in the next one.